Shalom, everyone. In the NATSARIM, that's what we're called. There's something for the masses to see, and then there's something for the initiated to see. It's the darkness hiding in open view. We call them Wiccans, witches, warlocks, wizards, shamans. That's what they go by. It's poison doctrine. Hello, everybody. My name is Lew White, and I'm with Torah Institute here in Louisville, Kentucky, in the United States. And we're going to look at some interesting studies here from Scripture on a test. Yahuwah has many ways of testing us, and one of his primary ways that I noticed in editing some of the Scriptures that I've been doing lately is that he tested us by giving us the Sabbath with manna. He used manna because we were coming out of Mitzrayim, or Egypt, and we were pagan. We were filled with paganism. I mean, we were in Satan's kingdom. And what happened was this 600,000 man army of Yahuwah, was with women and children added to that, was coming out of Mitzrayim, and they were seeing him. They saw the pillar of fire. They saw the cloud, and they were just following along. He defended them. He fed them manna. And I think it's Exodus or Shemoth 16. At verse 4, he says something very interesting. And this is a test. This is a test of whether or not they love him and obey him. In verse 4 of chapter 16, let's look at it. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, "See, I am raining bread from the heavens for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day in order to test them." Most translations use the word try them, whether they walk in my Torah or not. Okay, now he goes on in the next subsequent verses to explain that he rains the bread down for 6 days, and he doesn't do it on the 7th day so that it'll be real obvious. And he wants to see if they will stay in their place. And it's interesting because even though this upsets people, I want to point something out here. I think it's a little bit later here. All right. Anyway, it says, he said to them, "This is what Yahuwah has said. Tomorrow is a rest, a Sabbath, set apart to Yahuwah. That which you bake, bake. That which you cook, cook. And lay up for yourselves all that is left over to keep it until morning." And they laid it up until morning. And the food wouldn't stink, you know. And he said, "Gather it for 6 days, but the 7th day is a Sabbath. There is none." And it came to be that some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather, even though they were told not to. But they found nothing. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, "How long will you refuse to guard my commands and my Torah?" You see? And he says, "See, Yahuwah has given you the Sabbath. Therefore, he is giving you bread for 2 days on the 6th day. Let each one stay in his place. Do not let anyone go out of his place on the 7th day." So the people rested on the 7th day. Well, anyway, he made it a death penalty if you went out and did any work. And it's so serious. I mean, people don't understand that the guy that gathered sticks, they had to figure out what they were going to do with him. Well, Yahuwah commanded that he be stoned to death. Well, anyway, we have to look at our behavior as we walk personally before Yahuwah. And as we submit to his will, we actually are conquering our own and allowing him to rule over us. Instead of him answering all of our requests. He's not a genie. You know, we look for his will and we follow behind him, just like they followed then. And it is like a boot camp when you first start. In fact, it's always a boot camp because you never, ever stop following Yahuwah. And by following him like they did in the desert, you know, you stay in the wake of his. plowing the way for you and preparing. And this behavior of following him, keeping our eyes on him rather than all this other stuff. Don't look at that. I know I've been looking at some of that lately, and it just breaks your heart. Your heart melts in fear, and you start doubting. But when you say, "Wait a minute, look who's with him. Look who's with me," it isn't really. We're with him mostly, but we're following him. But our behavioral choices are measurable in our performance, and it expresses our respect or disrespect. So we have to produce the fruit, and that fruit is going to show him that we love him. He's looking for fruit, and we have to produce that. And the only way we can produce the fruit is to give ourselves. And it's interesting that in the book of John, or Yahuchanan 3:16, these words are well known, but listen to them. For Elohim so loved the world that he gave his only brought forth Son, so that everyone who believes in him should not perish, but possess everlasting life. So we have to figure out whether we're worshiping the possessor of heaven and earth, or whether we're worshiping ourselves. Now the next frame is just going to tell you some of these seminar topics that we're going to be using. Seminar terms. The traditional terms we're trying to get away from, because this is a restoration effort, and you can freeze this frame and read it and look it over, and you'll see that we're not going to use the word L-O-R-D as a replacement for his name. We're going to use this authentic name, Yahuwah. We're going to call Messiah Yahusha, his real name, or it's also Yahushua in 2 places. And we're not going to need any Greek, really, so we're going to use the authentic Hebrew, Mashiach, and the term God, which is a Norse deity, actually, of the sun. Sun worship was basically used by Satan to, deceive the nations. And it's still infecting us. It's like Egypt is still in people, We're going to refer to him as El, or Elohim. Some say Al, And it's 2 Hebrew letters that mean strength, basically, under control. And of course, the idea that the Jews are a religious group they're a tribe that descends from the man named Yehuda. Anyway, you can research that stuff. But Israel is the people that Yahuwah says are in a covenant relationship with him, and they can be a mixed multitude like they were when they came out of Mitzrayim or Egypt, because there were many other captured peoples that came out with the descendants of the man we call Israel. So the test of our behavior is really summed up, as Yahusha would also support this. He said that the greatest commandment and the second greatest commandment is hanging on these 2 things, and it's about love. Because if you look at what he said, love Yahuwah and love your neighbor as yourself. So if we love one another, we'll be known as taught ones of Yahusha. Now the next slide starts out quoting, basically I think this is an important thing, because these are elements that prepare the bride for the return. Now who's the bride? Well, those in a covenant relationship with him, the ones that are married to him, the ones that obey him and obey his commandments. Malachi 4, verse 4 through 6 tells us how to prepare for the end times. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant. Torah means instruction, which I commanded him in Horeb for all Yisrael, laws and right rulings. See, I am sending you Eliah the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahuwah, and he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with utter destruction. See, he was wanting to destroy all of Israel, the people of Israel, because they kept saying, why did you bring us out here in this wilderness? Well, that's what I'm talking about here too. The wilderness experience is the test. It's showing us whether we're faithful to him and whether we see him and obey him, or we're looking at the storm and the troubles. We're thirsty. We're hungry. Well, who's with us? Yahuwah is with us. See, that's what we have to remember. We don't want to go back to the world, you know, like they kept saying that. And then he said, stand back, I'm going to kill them all. But the same thing is threatening the whole earth. That's what we have to understand. It says, remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant. See, this is a very serious situation here in the end times, because distress is going to be unleashed. Now, this is how we're to prepare. Now, let's look at the Torah of Moshe in a very abbreviated form. There's 10 words that he gave us, and he wants us, he yearns for us, if only they would just obey me. Well, this is teaching us how to love him and love our neighbor. Watch this. Number 1, I am Yahuwah your Elohim. Have no other before my face. Number 2, you do not bow to images. Number 3, you do not cast the name of Yahuwah your Elohim to ruin. Number 4, this is the covenant sign forever of the everlasting covenant. Remember Shabbat to keep it Kodesh. That means set apart. Number 5, respect your father and your mother. Now, this is the beginning of the ones now how to get along with your neighbor. Number 6 is you do not murder. Number 7 is you do not break wedlock. Number 8, you do not steal. Number 9, you do not bear false witness against your neighbor. And number 10, you do not covet your neighbor's wife, house, field, servants, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Now, until you can recite these and number them and say them backwards, like number 10, number 9, number 8, you're not going to really know these things. You see, you've got to practice these and meditate on them day and night. Teach them to your children. And he even told us to do that. Now, these commandments that he gave Israel in the wilderness, that was like a boot camp. Now, people don't understand what a boot camp is. It's a military idea. It's a spiritual war because, see, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. That's one way of looking at it. But also, the boot camp idea, the thing that was going on in the wilderness was it was a training camp, because the training that they were getting was in his Torah. And the world has been rejecting Torah, and we see the effects of that, because the governments have been saying, don't let those children have those commandments. Well, that's what's killing the countries, believe it or not. Because there are our weapons, and if you take our weapons away from us, then we have no protection, because we're soldiers, we're embattled. And if we just forget to obey the commandments, or we don't know the commandments, then we're in serious trouble. Now, let's see. I'm going to have to get to the next slide here, because this next slide is really important. It's from Deuteronomy, or Devarim, chapter 6, verse 4 through 9. Hear, O Yisrael. That means hear and obey. Yahuwah our Elohim, Yahuwah is one. And you shall love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might. And these words, which I am commanding you today, shall be in your heart. And you shall impress them on your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand. And they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. See how important that is. Okay, let's see. Now the next slide is going to discuss a situation that occurred back in the days of when Dan and Ephraim and the people of Gilead were in the book of Judges were being described, and they were having a war between brothers. And we're still doing that now. We're fighting each other instead of the true enemy. And there was a test of proper speech at that time. People are saying, oh, you're not saying the name right. Well, or you're not doing this like I'm doing it, so therefore you're wrong. Well, you don't have to be the same, but we want to be in unity, you know. But here's what happened in Judges chapter 12, 5 and 6. And Gilead captured the fords of the Yarden and faced Ephraim. And it came to be when the fugitives from Ephraim said, let me pass over, They were wanting to cross the river. The men of Gilead said to him, "You're an Ephraimite." And if he said no, then he would say to him, "Please say Shibboleth." And he would say Sibboleth. He would mispronounce it because he was unable to pronounce it right. And they seized him and slew him at the fords of the Yarden. And at that time there fell 42,000 Ephraimites. The word Shibboleth is a Hebrew term that means a stream, a flowing or growing stem. It means something that's flowing, you know, like something that's, you know, like a stem growing or a stream that's flowing. But, you know, the fact is, this word was used as a determination of, like a password. In fact, it is still used widely on the internet as a means of firewall kind of thing, you know. But people kill people with their words every day. I've been slain with words myself personally. But as I go further and further down in importance, that's great. Let other leaders be lifted up. And that applies to Romans chapter 12 very, very closely. I like to read Romans 12, as a matter of fact. There's some things that pop out of verse 10 and verse 16 that are really amazing. But this is all about Israel reflecting back in the wilderness when they were being trained, because they were filled with paganism. And all these people are coming out of the world system and trying to keep the commandments. And they're fighting each other. But Yahuwah is training us, actually. We're not supposed to be training each other. We're just guiding one another in love, you know, in love. Our training comes through the walloping and spanking from Yahuwah. And it is a sign that we are his children, because if he's, you know, walloping us and giving us discipline, then we are his. Hebrews 12, verses 4 through 11 says, "You have not yet resisted unto blood, striving against sin. And you have forgotten the appeal which speaks to you as sons. My son, do not despise the discipline of Yahuwah, nor faint when you are reproved by him. For whom Yahuwah loves, he disciplines and flogs every son whom he receives." And this is a part of the boot camp experience, the training camp. If you endure discipline, Elohim is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom a father does not discipline? But if you are without discipline, of which all have become sharers, then you are illegitimate and not sons. Moreover, we indeed had fathers of our flesh disciplining us, and we paid them respect. Shall we not much rather be subject to the Father of spirits and live? For they indeed disciplined us for a few days, as seemed best to them, but he does it for our profit, so that we might share his apartness. And indeed, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but grievous, but afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. Now the people, the Israelites that were coming out of that world system of Pharaoh, are just like us coming out of the circuses. And what we have to realize is that we're not going to have a good time, because all of our family and all the people around us are all going to say, "What's happened to you?" Well, you know, that's another thing. The world can cause discipline too, but it's pressure, because we're in an iron furnace, you know, we're being purged. Now the next frame, let's see. If there's to be a test, what is it that we're tested on? Mainly, what's the fruit that he's looking for? He's looking for love to be produced, and not violence and hatred, you know. So if we see the truth, then we're going to obviously respond to it with the fruit of love. Now, here's what it says in Ecclesiastes 12, verse 13. "Let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear Elohim and guard his commands, for this applies to all mankind. For Elohim shall bring every work into judgment, including all that is hidden, whether good or whether evil." And to shamar, or guard, means to watch over carefully. And the idea that we're going to be, everything that we do is going to be appraised for a determination of error or correctness is a matter of Yahuwah determining whether it's acceptable behavior or unacceptable behavior, because he searches the hearts and minds to see what your motives are behind what you're doing. So you have to be very careful. Sometimes we see and suspect that the motive for somebody is, pretty obvious, but they're really getting crafty at it. But excusing yourself to get around the commandments, and you don't have to keep the Sabbath, that's for the Israelites. Well, what? He doesn't change, and Israel is supposed to be the priesthood to the nations. So our responsibility has always been to train them with his commandments. In Mark 16 verse 15, it says, Yahushua said to them, "Go into all the world and proclaim the good news to every creature." Now, what is the good news? Well, the good news is the message. The word besora is the word behind that. And it means a message. What message? Well, it's the 10 Commandments. That's what it is. He who has believed and has been immersed shall be saved, but he who has not believed shall be condemned. Now, the 10 Commandments isn't the only part of the message. There is a message about Yahushua's atoning sacrifice, that his blood covers our sins against those commandments, which has incurred an eternal, immeasurable, infinite debt that cannot be paid by anyone except the blood of Messiah. And he has given himself. See, that's the gift, the offering of himself. And that's what we do as imitators. We lay our lives down for him to use us and take advantage of our vessels to be able to promote what he's doing in the world. In other words, he uses his people as household vessels. Now, what point is it that we make our commitment in the army, in the spiritual battle? It's at our immersion, which is the point where we make our pledge. In the military, we had to swear an oath, which I didn't know I was not supposed to do, but at the time, because I was a young man, they always get the young men and the young women usually, they have to swear that they are going to obey. Their commanding officers and, of course, the leader of the country and all that. Well, this is where we make our commitment to the creator of the universe. This is the highest pledge you can make, and it's at our immersion, and it represents our circumcision of our heart, and it enters us into the covenant it's called a pledge of a good conscience towards Yahuwah, and we actually become citizens of the Commonwealth of Israel to partake of the promises at that point. See, unless you understand that, you're not, in the covenant. You're not in the army, and you don't have the protection and the gear and the armor that you need to be wearing for this spiritual battle to walk in this world. We don't walk arrogantly, though. We walk in humility, knowing the severity of the penalty is so great for those people that we're dealing with. We don't act arrogant towards them or better than them. In fact, it's just the opposite. We put ourselves below them and become their servants and plead with them as if he is pleading through us. And that is where we enter the battle, because the battleground is not space, the final frontier, or land. It's men's hearts, men's and women's hearts. That's our battleground. Now we're going to move into the next slide. Matthew 5 at verse 17 is very important. Yahushua said this, "Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete. For truly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one yod or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah till all be done. Whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men so shall be called least in the reign of the heavens. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the reign of the heavens." So are we supposed to teach the commandments? Yeah. Now we're moving along to the next slide. Now, he also speaks in John chapter 14, verse 6. Yahushua said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And then a little later, in some chapters later, he says in chapter 17, at verse 17, set them apart in your truth. Your word is truth. And that would be the 10 words that he's referring to specifically. Now, when Yisrael left Egypt, which was Satan's realm, they entered the training camp under Yahuwah in the wilderness. And I want to make that point very, very strong, because we're all being kind of in that same situation, because we're coming out of the circuses, and we've been taught not to worry about the 10 Commandments. I mean, they'll say it one way and say it another. We'll say, well, don't look at that commandment. We changed that one. And, you know, the fourth commandment that people, Catholics don't know what the fourth commandment is, because they put another list together, but because they wiped out the second commandment about bowing to images, and they made the Sabbath commandment about the third commandment. But the fourth commandment deals with the covenant sign. And here we have a picture that's just a depiction of Yahuwah in a fiery cloud. And this is what I call the Shekinah. And it refers to the Mishkan, the dwelling place. The dwelling place of Yahuwah's presence, manifested physically, was the Shekinah, kabod, or the glowing emanation. And this training camp was a form or a pattern that Israel had to be disciplined with. This discipline was something that was absolutely necessary at the beginning, because there was so much of Satan's kingdom in these people's hearts. And this is a boot camp in a spiritual war, so we have to constantly keep our minds on this kind of intensity if we're going to have this have success at this battle. Now, what we have to fight against mostly are strongholds, and that's what this ministry of Yahusha does. Is it tears down strongholds, and most of it comes from lawlessness that's been institutionalized. But righteousness will be revealed in behavior. If you're doing something that Yahuwah has endorsed, and somebody says, well, you don't have to do that. Well, who would say that? Well, that's the same thing that was told to the woman in the garden. You know, did Yahuwah really say this? Well, you know that doesn't apply to you, don't you? Because, you know, that was for the other people. No, this is for all mankind. Now, here's a text that deals with this. Colossians 2, verse 8, see to it that no one makes a prey of you through philosophy and empty deceit, according to the tradition of men, according to the elementary matters of the world, and not according to Messiah. See, but we're supposed to walk as Messiah walked. Oh, thank you. There's a cup of coffee. Now, our test is on the fruit of love. And, of course, other fruits like joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, goodness, and all those. But 2 Corinthians 13:5, which kind of reminds me of 1 Corinthians 13. What's 1 Corinthians 13, anybody? Well, it's about love. You know, 2 Corinthians 13 says, examine yourselves whether you are in the belief. Prove, that means test, yourselves. Or do you not know yourselves that Yahushua Messiah is in you unless you are disapproved? So that reflects back to the other text we were talking about. So anyway, Yahushua said, when I return, when the Son of Man returns, or Son of Adam returns, will he find the faith on the earth? Well, if he hadn't stepped in and raised up the NATSARIM, no, he wouldn't. Because the Catholicism is not the faith. And believe it or not, all the subsequent denominations of Protestants are not the faith either, because they're Catholics. Like a Baptist would say, what, you're calling me a Catholic? Well, according to the definition of being a Catholic, it's belief in a Trinity. That's what defines it. You just look that up and you'll see that on another seminar. That's what defines a Catholic. Now, anyway, here's two little quips. If you ask a Catholic or well, mostly a Catholic, is Mary a Catholic? They'd say, oh, yes, absolutely, she's Catholic. But then, how can that be? You know, John the Baptist, was he a Baptist? No. Well, his real name was Yehukanan, and her name is Miriam. But they were not in such a faith as we see them operating in. Now, to pass the test of love, we need the perfect set of instructions. In other words, we're being trained and disciplined, flogged, you know. Hey, you're out of line, come on. And he's very merciful, he's very kind, and says, okay, you got out of bounds, get back up, you know. And it's like this drill sergeant, and he's standing over you saying, stand up, get on your feet. You know, if you get knocked down in the battle, that means like you fell, you sinned. Get back up, because our training comes from exercise. Keep doing the right thing, the right thing, the right thing, and then get on track, and then you get his viewpoint, his mind, you know. Now, to pass this test, we need the perfect set of instructions, and that would be the Torah. You meditate on the Torah, like I was saying, we read at the beginning. Look at those things over and over, and look at the complete text in Exodus chapter 20 and Deuteronomy chapter 5. Read it all, and read Deuteronomy 4 and 5 and 6 together, because it's all part of a big, you know, dissertation about this whole thing. Now, in the man named, we call him Yahusha, he was the successor of Moshe. He has the same name as the Messiah. Chapter 1, verse 8. It says, do not let this book of the Torah depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you guard to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous and act wisely. Now, we're to be doers of the word. That was the same word that he talked about, the book of the Torah. James, or his real name is Yaakov, the half-brother of Yahusha, in chapter 1, verse 21 through 25 says, therefore put away all filthiness and overflow of evil, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your lives, and become doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. Because if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like a man who looks at his natural face in a mirror, for he looks at himself and then goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. But he that looked into the perfect Torah, that of freedom, and continues in it, not becoming a hearer that forgets, but a doer of work, this one shall be blessed in his doing of the Torah. And now, right now, I'd like to just take a moment and ask a question for the class. By stealth and craftiness and deception, who is it that wants us to disobey the Torah of Yahuwah? Now, a little music, ding dong, ding, you know, a little time passing. Anybody know the answer? Well, the dragon, you know. Now, Revelation 12:9 talks about this. And the great dragon was thrown out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who leads all the world astray. He is thrown to the earth. He was thrown to the earth, and his messengers were thrown out with him. And Matthew 24, verse 24 says, for false messiahs and false prophets shall arise, and they shall show great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the chosen ones. One of the things that occurred to me was that Romans 12 is such an important thing for us to understand. Let me show you Romans 12 really quickly. This is just incredible, and how it applies to each and every one of us. If the Messiah is in you, or if you want to be possessed by the Spirit of Messiah. I call upon you, therefore, brothers, through the compassion of Elohim, to present your bodies a living offering, set apart, well-pleasing to Elohim, your reasonable worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you prove what is that good and well-pleasing and perfect desire of Elohim. For I say, through the favor which has been given to me, to everyone who is among you, do not think of himself more highly than he should think, but to think soberly, as Elohim has given a measure of belief. Now, verse 4. For as we have many members in one body, but all members do not have the same function, so we, the many, are one body in Messiah, and members each one of one another. Now, having different gifts, according to the favor which was given to us, let us use them accordingly. If prophecy, according to the proportion of belief; if serving, in the serving; or he who is teaching, in the teaching; or he who encourages, in the encouragement; or he who is sharing in sincerity; or he who is leading in diligence; he who shows compassion joyously. And starting in verse 9, let love, without hypocrisy, let love be without hypocrisy. In other words, don't love artificially. Love in reality. Shrink from what is wicked. Cling to what is good. In brotherly love, tenderly loving towards one another. In appreciation, now watch this, giving preference to each other. In other words, prefer the other above yourself. Not idle in duty, ardent in spirit. Be ardent in spirit. Serving the master, rejoicing in the expectancy, enduring under pressure, continuing steadfastly in prayer, imparting to the needs of the set-apart ones, pursuing kindness towards strangers. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not be proud in mind, but go along with the lowly. Did you hear that? Go along with the lowly. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Repay no one evil for evil. Respect what is right in the sight of all men. If possible, on your part, be at peace with all men. Beloved, do not revenge yourselves, but give place to the wrath, for it has been written, vengeance is mine, I shall repay, says Yahuwah. Instead of, if your enemy hungers, feed him. If he thirsts, give him a drink. For in so doing, you heap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That is so important. All right, let's see. Now, the next frame tells us that outside the covenant, there's no hope at all. Ephesians 2, verses 10 through 13. For we are his workmanship, created in Messiah Yahusha unto good works, which Elohim prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. He prepared something for us. What was it? The Ten Commandments. Therefore, remember that you, once Gentiles, in the flesh, who are called the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision, made in the flesh by hands, that at that time, what time? That was back when you were once Gentiles. See, you're not Gentiles any longer. Once you've gone through the water and you're in the army, you've got armor on, you're fighting a battle. You're not a Gentile. Don't let anybody fool you. At that time, you were without Messiah, excluded from the citizenship of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no expectation, and without Elohim in the world. But now in Messiah Yahusha, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of the Messiah. You're no longer Gentiles. Speak also to the children of Israel, saying, surely my Sabbaths you shall keep. Now this is a reference from Shemoth chapter 31, verse 13. It is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am Yahuwah who set you apart. You shall keep the Sabbath. That means guarded. Therefore, for it is set apart to you. Everyone who profanes it shall surely be put to death. That hurts when you're killed. For whoever does any work on it, that person shall be cut off from among his people. Work shall be done for 6 days, but the seventh is the Sabbath of rest, set apart to Yahuwah. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. Uh-oh, he said it twice. Therefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, that means guarded, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations as a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days Yahuwah made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Now read Hebrews chapter 4. It says the very same thing. All right. It's got the death penalty attached to it. Now this is when you were betrothed with the nation of Israel. In Exodus or Shemot, chapter 24, verse 7, and he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people, and they said, all that Yahuwah has spoken, we shall do and obey. That's the wife, the bride, saying, I do. And Moshe took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, see, the blood of the covenant which Yahuwah has made with you concerning all these words. Now, the blood of the covenant that's sprinkled on our hearts cost the life of our Messiah. And he says, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. All right. Deuteronomy 29:14. And not with you alone I am making this covenant and this oath, but with him who stands here with us today before Yahuwah, our Elohim, as well as him who is not here with us today. He's eternal. Yeah. See, he's reaching out to everybody. Now, we overcome with love and self-control. We only have to control ourselves. So this is a thing that a brother has basically distilled down to these two elements. Let the other person have it. That is their opinion. And let them have your love. Let them have your love. It's both, really, not your condemnation. And they will feel it if you condemn them. Even if you don't show it, they will sense it. So you don't want to make them feel like you're arrogant or above them, but put yourself below them and say, you know, you're entitled to that. You're entitled to that. And I'm going to let you have that opinion. I'm going to let you have that. I'm not saying it's necessarily correct for me, but let's find out. And then don't take anything personally, because you're going to receive persecution as soon as you open your mouth with the truth. The truth is, first, it's thought to be ridiculous, and it just sounds silly to people. But a little bit later, it's violently resisted. I mean, people start coming to blows. But finally, it's accepted as being obvious, you know. But you have to let it go through those cycles. So don't take anything personally. And here's an important thing that I think is part of that. Shed the hate that's being cast upon you, okay? As they send hate towards you, just shed it and make it your signal as you receive hatred that you're to work harder to show them love. So as you receive this hate, instead of that natural instinct to recoil with, I'm right, don't. Just say, oh, I must have offended you. And just use that as a sign that you're not loving them enough. So let it strengthen your love and your resolve to love them and serve them. They're probably having a bad day. And you can choose to be the best part of their day or not. See, if somebody's having a bad day and you become the best part of their day, that can turn everything around for them. In fact, their whole life might go down a different path. So let them have love and don't take the hate. That's basically what we're doing here. You just let them have the love and don't take the hate. Hey, Chris, what do you think of that? I was given that by Yahusha. Don't think it was mine. When you were giving us the idea that we let the other person have it, what we really have to let them have is love. And we don't want to take anything personally, so don't take the hate. Anyway. Now, the next slide. The way of life that would be what? The belief. The belief is distilled down into the 10 Commandments, which teach us love. How to love Yahuwah and how to love your neighbor. You love your neighbor when you don't kill your neighbor, when you respect your neighbor, which includes your parents. You don't break their wedding vows, commit adultery with their women. You don't steal things and people. You don't covet what they have. That's loving your neighbor. But, you know, if you do the other things, then you're not loving your neighbor. Anyway, I was quoting Luke 8:18, verse 8 earlier. But when the Son of Adam comes, shall he even find the belief on the earth? The way of life is the belief. Now, some people have heard of these two fellows, Yohane and Mamre. Yohane and Mamre were these two magicians that were in Pharaoh's court as Moshe and Aharon were pleading with the Pharaoh to let the people of Israel go. These two magicians opposed Moshe with their tricks and their signs and wonders. And so do these also oppose the truth. Men of corrupt minds found worthless concerning the belief. But they shall not go on further, for their folly shall be obvious to all, as also that of those men became. But you did closely follow my teaching, the way of life, the purpose, the belief, the patience, the love, the endurance, the persecutions, the sufferings, which came to me at Antioch, at Iconium, and at Lystra, what persecutions I bore. Now that would be our beloved brother Paul talking. And in 2 Timothy 3, verse 13, it says, but evil men and impostors shall go on to the worse, leading astray and being led astray. But you stay in what you have learned and trusted, having known from whom you have learned, and that from a babe you have known the set-apart Scriptures, which are able to make you wise for deliverance through belief in Messiah Yahusha. All Scripture is breathed by Elohim and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for setting straight, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of Elohim might be fitted, equipped for every good work. Now, does that sound like he's talking about military stuff? Yes. He's talking about putting the uniform on. You know, you need to know the Scriptures. You have to know the battle plan. Okay. I think that's all of part 1. Now I've got to go to part 2 here. All right, let's see. There's normal. All right. Now, we're to test ourselves according to the way of Yahuwah. Why are we to test ourselves? That's the question. Matthew 24:24 says, it's because for false messiahs and false prophets shall arise, and they shall show great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the chosen ones. Now, here's a multiple choice question. You've got one of two answers. Who wants us to ignore the 10 Commandments and the rest of the instructions for living in the way of Yahuwah? Is it Yahuwah, or is it Hashatan and the false teachers that masquerade as messengers of light? Well, obviously it would be the second one. Now, we are led astray from, what are we being led astray from? And how is that accomplished? The answer is, we are being led astray from the Torah, which is called the way of Yahuwah, by means of teachers who add to and take away from. They annul and cancel things, and they add their own instructions in. They take human traditions and replace Yahuwah's traditions with them. We must not fall from our steadfastness and dedication to Yahusha, and that which he has given us a love for, which is his Torah. See, he's given some of us a love for his commandments. And because he's the living Torah, see, this is his character. His character is embodied in those 10 words that teach love. And he's our first love, living within us, that he's chosen. But we don't treat others with arrogance. Now, the next slide is 2 Peter, verse 3, verse 17 says, you then, beloved ones, being forewarned, watch lest you also fall from your own steadfastness, being led away with the delusion of the lawless, but grow in the favor and knowledge of our Master and Savior, Yahushua HaMashiach. To him be the esteem both now and in a day that abides. Amen. And then in 2 Corinthians, Paul writes this: examine yourselves whether you are in the belief. Prove yourselves. Test yourselves. Or do you not know yourselves that Yahushua Messiah is in you unless you are disapproved? And then we have the final thing mentioned in Revelation 22, verse 14. Blessed are those doing his commands, so that the authority shall be theirs unto the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city. That would be the New Jerusalem. And the next slide is guard the way of Yahuwah. There's those who guard the way of Yahuwah are also called the household of Abraham. In Genesis 18, verse 17, it says, and Yahuwah said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am doing? Since Abraham is certainly going to become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I have known him, so that he commands his children and his household after him to guard the way of Yahuwah. See, I'm not making this stuff up. It's right there. It's talking about the way of Yahuwah. What is it? To do righteousness and right ruling, so that Yahuwah brings to Abraham what he has spoken to him. Galatians 3, verse 29 says, and if you are of Messiah, then you are a seed of Abraham, and heirs according to the promise. Our goal is to be restored, and to be found worthy to eat from the tree of life. And it says in Revelation 2:7, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the assemblies. To him who overcomes, I shall give to eat from the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of Elohim. See, nothing's changing. There's no, shadow of turning. Yahuwah is straight on one thing. If you just read the first 5 books, you see the people constantly crying out, going, why did you take us out of there? Please, don't do it. And they kept seeing how many people died, but they wouldn't listen. That was the flogging. All right, the manna test. Now this is important. I read this earlier. Exodus 16, or Shemos 16, verse 4. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, see, I am raining bread from the heavens for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day in order to try them, whether they walk in my Torah or not. Now that's Sabbath, is the Sabbath test. Now the next slide says, Exodus 16, 27 through 30. And it came to be that some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather, but they found none. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, how long shall you refuse to guard my commands and my Torah? That's the plural of Torah. See, because Yahuwah has given you the Sabbath, therefore he is giving you bread for 2 days on the 6th day. Let each one stay in his place. Don't let anyone go out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day. Do you? Why not? Remember, it's got the death penalty attached to it. Now, who was it that led some of us astray? Well, a lot of people look back at the year 321 and the year 325, and we look to a man who organized a universal religion. That's what the word means. Catholic means universal. And Constantine I instituted the Day of the Sun as a empire-wide edict. Now, this is a translation of his own words. On the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and people residing in cities rest, and let all workshops be closed. In the country, however, persons engaged in agriculture may freely and lawfully continue their pursuits, because it often happens that another day is not so suitable for grain sowing or for vine planting, lest by neglecting the proper moment for such operations, the bounty of heaven should be lost. This was the first Sunday law, and it was done on the 7th day of the 3rd Roman month, AD 321. Now, note, too, that I don't mention it here, but I want to mention this, that Yahuwah instituted the Sabbath day at creation. And he continued it all through time, and it's in every culture on the planet, 7 days in every week. regardless of language and so forth. There's over 200 something languages that even have a word for the seventh day that relates directly to the word Sabbath, like Sabutu and Sabo and all those. So, here's the thing. It had the death penalty attached to it for violating it, Yahuwah's own words. Constantine instituted the death penalty for working on the venerable day of the sun. And that's interesting because Satan is an imitator. So the only way Satan could do this is by instituting a change, turning Yahuwah's word to wormwood, is altering his words, and feeding them this lie, and then making the death penalty apply to it. Can you imagine that? Now here's the father of the faith, as they call him, Abraham, and we read about him in Hebrews chapter 11 too. Because Abraham believed and obeyed Yahuwah, he passed the test. It was a serious test. Genesis 22:18 says, "And in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed because you have obeyed my voice." So that's amazing, because one man obeyed his voice, so Yahuwah decided to bless all the nations through him. And in chapter 22, verse 10 through 12, Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the messenger of Yahuwah called to him from the heavens and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, "Here I am." And he said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy, nor touch him, for now I know that you fear Elohim, seeing that you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." It's a matter of what we prioritize in our hearts. Abraham treasured his son, Ishak, more than life itself. Abraham would have given his own life before his own son, as many fathers would. But he loved Yahuwah above his son. That's why Yahusha said, whoever hates, or whoever does not hate his father and his mother and his brothers and his family, and more than, it's not really about loving and hating. But the difference between the two is so great that it's almost like love and hate. In other words, you love Yahuwah so far above what you love your family with that it's almost like hate. He doesn't really mean you hate your family. That's not what he means. But he's showing that distinction. It means to love something less, than him. And in Genesis 22:13 through 18, "And Abraham lifted his eyes and looked and saw behind him a ram caught in a bush by its horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up for a burnt offering instead of his son. So he named the place Yahuwah Yireh, as it is said to this day, on the mountain Yahuwah provides." Now, and continuing on, Yahuwah from the heavens says this, "By myself I have sworn, declares Yahuwah, because you have done this, and have not withheld your son, your only son, that I shall certainly bless you, and shall certainly increase your seed as the stars of the heavens, and as the sand which is on the seashore, and let your seed possess the gate of their enemies. And in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice." So we have to ask ourselves, what is the most precious thing to you? If it's not Yahusha, then you should really be worried. The final restoration at the end of days is discussed here in chapter 24 of Matthew. "And many false prophets shall arise and lead many astray, and because of the increase in lawlessness, the love of many shall become cold. But he who shall have endured to the end shall be saved. And this good news," that's the Besorah, the message, the report of the reign, "shall be proclaimed in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end shall come." Now, by adding to or taking away from the Torah is how we're led astray. And if somebody obeys, then they're thought to be part of some kind of cult. So the truth is to be written in our hearts by the Messiah. Yirmiyahu chapter 31, they call him Jeremiah, at verse 33 says, "For this is the covenant I shall make with the house of Israel after those days, declares Yahuwah." This is quoted in Hebrews chapter 8, and I believe Hebrews chapter 10 as well. I shall put my Torah in their inward parts, and write it on their hearts. And I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Now the next slide. The Torah is the living words. Stephen, who's a person I try to pray for every day, he's dead, but he pops up in Acts chapter 7, and he was a wonderful, humble man. His face appeared like a messenger. You know, the purity of this man was so amazing. In Acts chapter 7, verse 37, it says, "This is the Moshe who said to the children of Israel, Yahuwah your Elohim shall raise up for you a prophet like me from your brothers. Him you shall hear." He's referring to the prophet like Moshe, being Yahusha himself. "This is he who was in the assembly in the wilderness with the messenger, who spoke to him on Mount Sinai, and with our fathers, who received the living words to give to us, to whom our fathers would not become obedient, but thrust away, and in their hearts they turned back to Mitzrayim." Now, Christianity has thrust these same words away. You know, we don't want to thrust them away. We want to hunt them down and read them every day, like we did at the beginning. Now, what seems to be the overarching topic our Rabbi Yahusha expresses over and over is exemplified in John or Yehukin in chapter 15, verses 10 through 14. "If you guard my commands, and you shall stay in my love." Now you see how he's relating guarding, in other words, watching carefully over his commands, and equating it with love. See that? "Even as I have guarded my Father's commands and stay in his love. These words I have spoken to you, so that my joy might be in you, and that your joy might be complete. This is my command, that you love one another, as I have loved you." Now that's a tall order. As he loved us, we are to love one another. No one has greater love than this. And no one, that one should lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do whatever I command you. The love for one another is so lacking. And that's what we have to keep hammering at. This is the overarching topic. Now, the next slide. "Announcing the everlasting message," Revelation 14. "And I saw another messenger flying in mid-heaven, holding the everlasting Besorah, to announce to those dwelling on the earth, even to every nation and tribe and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear Elohim, and give esteem to him, because the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made the heaven and the earth and sea and fountains of water." Now, if you don't keep the Sabbath, are you truly paying any kind of esteem to the one who made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and the fountains of water? Not likely. And we remember that Ecclesiastes 12 tells us we are to fear Elohim and guard his commands. See how it reflects what we just read? Fear Elohim. That's the message of the last messenger. "For this applies to all mankind." And he said it was to every nation, tribe, and so forth. If you go back to that frame and look at that, back this up, and look at what it said in Revelation and what that says, it's applying to all mankind. "For Elohim shall bring every work into right ruling, including all that is hidden, whether good or whether evil." In other words, if you're following Constantine and you say, "Oh, the day of the sun, that's what the apostles did." No, the apostles didn't do the Sunday thing. You know, that's part of the leading astray. "Remember the Torah of Moshe my servant, which I commanded him in Horeb for all Israel, laws and right rulings. See, I am sending you Eliyahu the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahuwah." That's what they call the day of the Lord, but it's the day of Yahuwah. It's not the day of Baal. Remember, Baal is defined as a Lord. You know, it's not the day of Baal. "And he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with utter destruction." See, he was going to destroy all of Israel for not obeying him, not believing him, and trusting him for everything. They forgot who was with them. Yeah, that's what we have to remember. When we're in the midst of the storm, be humble and put yourself below the other person. Read Romans 12. Be humble about the whole thing and love the other person. Let them have love and don't take the hate. It says in 1 Yahusha'S John chapter 2, verse 5, but whoever guards his word, truly the love of Elohim has been perfected in him. By this we know that we are in him, guarding his word. In 1 Yahusha'S 4:16 it says, and we have known and believed the love that Elohim has for us. Who can separate us from his love? Love, Elohim is love, and he who stays in love stays in Elohim, and Elohim in him. By this, love has been perfected with us in order that we might have boldness in the day of judgment. Because as he is, so are we in this world. For there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear holds punishment. And he who fears has not been made perfect in love. We love him because he loved us. If someone says, I love Elohim and hates his brother, he is a liar. For the one not loving his brother whom he has seen, how is he able to love Elohim whom he has not seen? And we have this command from him, that the one loving Elohim should love his brother too. Did any of the words, which word is the most commonly used word in that text? I think it might be love. If you're to pass the test, you will not only be found living in obedience, but you will have taught others also, multiplying what you have been entrusted with. And it's not just about you. See, that's the mina. You invest the mina in mankind. Matthew 25:22 says, then he who had received 2 talents came and said, Master, you have delivered to me 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more talents besides them. His master said to him, well done, good and trustworthy servant. You are trustworthy over a little. I shall set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Wow, that gives me chills. Because we understand it. It's not about money. How the prodigal son returns to the household. By repentance. The chosen ones are those who guard the way of Yahuwah and are of the household of belief, offspring of Abraham, and have become children of Yahuwah. We overcome because Yahushua's Spirit living within us enables us to overcome through love, which is the way of Yahuwah. What is the way of Yahuwah? Love. And you overcome by way of love. And you turn around, you repent, you pledge, and it's signified by your immersion. When you lay your life down for your Maker to be used as a vessel in the world. This is a dark world. Some of us are sent into some scary places to do unbelievably weird things. But, you know, that's fine. We just have to do whatever he's put before us. There's a lot of us that would not like to do what we are sent to do. Anyway, here's a little image here that depicts the Father, which was actually Yahuwah himself, receiving those lost sons that went out into the world and were forgotten. And this represents generations of people, because this isn't just a parable about a little, like 1 or 2 years. The older brother and the younger brother represent the house of Israel and the house of Yehuda. And in Luke 15:27 it says, and he said to him, your brother has come, returned back to the household, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf because he received him back in health. In other words, he was brought back to life. Ephraim must overcome his arrogance. And that's who we are, because we weren't in the Torah, but we knew about the Messiah, but we were living in a circus. But Yehuda has to overcome his jealousy. Now, the most important test of love to see if we've learned the lesson is illustrated here. Luke 6, verse 37. And do not judge, and you shall not be judged at all. Condemn not, and you shall not be condemned at all. Forgive, and you shall be forgiven. And his brother, half-brother James, or Yaakov, chapter 4, verse 11. Brothers, do not speak against one another. He that speaks against a brother and judges his brother speaks against Torah and judges Torah. And if you judge Torah, you are not a doer of Torah, but a judge. Now, our behavior reveals one of two things. Our behavior. Look at the person, and if you see the fruit, then you're looking at a certain kind of tree. If you see love, then that's a tree that's good. If you see hate, that's a bad tree. What are you hearing and seeing in the fruit of others? Now, here's a very important text too, illustrating love. Ephesians 4, verse 11. And he himself gave some as emissaries, and some as prophets, and some as evangelists, and some as shepherds and teachers, for the perfecting of the set-apart ones, to the work of service, to a building up of the body of Messiah, until we all come to the unity of the belief and of the knowledge of the Son of Elohim, to a perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the completeness of Messiah, so that we should no longer be children, tossed and borne about by every wind of teaching, by the trickery of men in cleverness, to the craftiness of leading astray, but maintaining the truth in love. We grow up in all respects into him who is the head, Messiah, from whom the entire body, joined and knit together by what every joint supplies, according to the working by which each part does its share, causes growth of the body for the building up of itself in love. See, it's about love. So the reunification of the two sticks, or the two branches, into one stick is going to be foundationally love, done by Messiah. It's the activity of Messiah in his body that's going to bring us back together. And in Revelation 12 it says, and the dragon was enraged with the woman. That would be Israel, the wife of Yahuwah. And he went to fight with the remnant of her seed. Fight. This is a battle. You are a combatant. You are in boot camp. You're in training with the remnant of her seed. And the remnant of the seed is the Torah, the teachings that are to go into your heart and grow up and become fruitful. Those guarding the commands of Elohim and possessing the witness of Yahushua Messiah. Those two things. So we're watchmen, we're NATSARIM, and we're put on the earth. We're being raised up as an army. We're in prisons. Men's hearts are being transformed inside prison. They were just as dead in their sins and their crimes as any of us on the outside of prisons are. There's a whole army of people in prisons that are being awakened, and they're NATSARIM. And they're different people now, but their bodies are still locked up. But we're all guilty of the penalty of death. So, you know, don't think that you're better because you're not in prison or you haven't been caught or whatever it is. You have to turn your life over to Yahushua and do the test. You want to go with Chris's little essay there and bring some of those points out?
Yeah, definitely, mate.
Yeah.
If anyone doesn't know, a couple of days ago, Chris wrote an article about the test also, relating to the blessings and cursings of being in the covenant and passing the test. I just wanted to say that bootcamp behaviour is associated with, and it is in conjunction with, the blessings and the curses of the covenant that Moshe gave Israel. The curses are a deterrent to keep us in Torah protection and blessed. This is our promise from Yahuwah. We are to be obedient to Torah and work its disciplines through into our behavior. If we are obstinate or stubborn, our protection barrier starts breaking down and the enemy of our spirits rushes in and wants to start taking over our vessel so that our behavior is abominable to shame the Torah. The enemy's aim is to render us in guilt so that we will be afraid to re-enter Torah zone, rendering the army of Yahusha weaponless. Yahusha wants a gutsy army that will get up when they fall or are shot down by sin and continue the journey. The protection and blessing from Yahuwah all stems from our behavior, or how we apply Torah obedience into every aspect of our lives. People can't help but notice His presence around you and the blessing in your life once we leave the barnyard behavior behind. As we seek out the leaven in our homes before feast day, so we must seek out unscriptural behavior within ourselves and destroy it. Of course, Yahusha is the shepherd of our lives, and He will lead us to find the unnecessary behavior blocking us from His love. All the wheat eventually grows to the same size, so we must be an example and an encouragement with stacks of patience for those following. Any sinner who is genuine, just like a bride, with Yahusha can achieve the wheat height and His blessings in their lives. So this is why we have boot camp, to set forth the right relationship we need we personally need to have with Torah instruction, which brings forth the fruit of righteousness. The right relationship is love, as in what Daud and Jonathan had, Yahusha and the disciples had. Love is a behavior which is nice and lovely to be around. This is what we all have to obtain. Love is only one behavior, and it is simple and sweet, and obtainable for all through discipline. Love behavior is recognizable in any language. It is right and good. Love is not moody or obnoxious. Love maintains its behavior through any storm or any attack. So what happens in boot camp stays in boot camp. Boot camp sorts the wheat from the tares. And we must remember that whilst teaching this boot camp behavior, we will come across a bit harsh at times to others because they usually take offense and accuse you of judging their behavior, which is not the case. We're only describing correct behavior. When you are not teaching boot camp behavior, you have a wonderful opportunity to live correct behavior and to present Yahusha's love through your vessel to others in your place of occupation or wherever you are. What I'm wanting to say really is that I would much rather live this behavior than to have to teach it all the time, and they are both a different experience. And that's written in love from Brother Chris.
I wanted to say that it reflects part of what we covered earlier too about the discipline. And Deuteronomy 8, verse 5 and 6 says, "Thus you shall know in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so Yahuwah your Elohim disciplines you. Therefore you shall guard the commands of Yahuwah your Elohim to walk in his ways and to fear him." That's exactly what happens in boot camp, in any boot camp of any army. We are in a battle. Well, that was wonderful, Aaron.
So since you've heard about the test and have taken more specifically on board, what have you seen sort of? What have you sort of felt going on around you, like when you started? I mean, you've been in the Torah for decades. I was going to say centuries, decades.
Yeah.
But to have it all brought down into a specific behaviour. What have you seen going on around you?
Well, the thing that happened when Chris and you shared this idea, the distilled formula, I took it immediately and understood it because Yahusha has instilled the stronghold thing in me to overcome the strongholds. And there's a lot of those, but in all the minutia of all this research, you still have to go back to the foundation of Yahusha, who is the servant. And he is in us serving love, you know, and putting ourselves below the other person in order to draw them into the truth and be with them in kindness and love and patience while they wrestle with the truth that we share, and not take the hate, you know. So it's love, hate, you know. When he says don't take anything personally, that's the second part. That means you don't have to receive the hate. Let that shed off, and just, I see it as a cue to love them even more. So it's feedback. It's a cycle. If you give them what you know, and let them have it, you're really letting them have love. And then if you see that you're getting hate, then you use that as more motivation to show more love. So it's like a turning water wheel. You know, as they show hate to you, it just makes the wheel move faster. The hate turns the wheel of love faster and faster until the power of the love, which is actually the real key to the whole thing, is Yahusha. He is the power behind it all, and gives us equips us each day to get through it. And I have days where I just don't want to face what I have to face, and yet I look at him and I go, I can do it because you're with me. And that's what Israel failed with. Israel kept failing because they, oh, that's right, I forgot, he's with us. That's the difference between the man Yahusha, they call him Joshua, and Caleb. Caleb and Joshua, as they call him. They knew who was with them. They said, oh, these people, they're giants. They're Anakim, and they're really big. We look like grasshoppers, but they don't have a chance. You know, we're going to go in and possess the land. And then instead, the other 10 spies said, no, we can't possibly do this. And the hearts of the people fainted. Oh, boy. Did you not notice that he's with you? I mean, there he is, a physical manifestation of him. And they, with their own eyes, saw what he did to the Pharaoh and Pharaoh's armies. And they saw all these things happen. And they still failed. So we have that to see. And we have to learn from those things. So they were in boot camp then. They were in a training camp. And we are in a training camp. And we have to get through it, you know. But we can only do it with the power of Yahusha's love. That's what I see. But I tell you what, you asked me the direct question is, what have I seen since Chris has brought this up, is I've seen even more persecution and more need for it. It's almost like Yahusha used this to bring forth at this time because the persecution is ramping up. And it's just really serious. And it's spiritual. Because there's nothing wrong. The birds are singing, the sun's shining, and yet there's all this drama. And it's got to be spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and brothers are hating each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important for us to start doing this in our homes, we've realised. And so for any believers who may not have heard about the test yet, or this is new to them, or maybe you've just become a NATSARIM, maybe you've just been immersed, it's probably the most important thing to get you on your way, because there's so much, like you said, drama and emotion and people kicking each other. With those two rules, just let everybody have it. It kind of means that you don't get involved in their drama. I mean, I'm in the hairdressing industry, so every client that walks in the door is certain degrees of full of himself, you know. And so instead of challenging them, instead of kind of letting them know that, you know, I don't think you're as important as you think you are, you kind of let them have who they think they are, You kind of let them have who they are. You don't challenge them or fight them or show any kind of bad behavior towards them or be moody, like the article said. You're just letting them have who they are. They're allowed to be who they want to be. because they're under different rules to us, you know, they think. So just let them have who they are. And so that in itself is just a challenge when you...
You know, Romans 12 actually has this test in it. When you read Romans 12, as we did, it actually is the model of everything of our behavior. It's about us. And that behavior is Messiah, Yahushua himself, enabling us with his power of love. You know, how many times do we see the word love used in these scriptures today? We use quite a bit of scripture because that's where the power is. It's in his word. Because his word is the source of the power, because he is the word. You know, it's his character. And when we adopt his character, then we're performing the test with, it's a breeze. As long as we keep our eyes on him and not the storm. I keep illustrating the storm and him. And when Peter was going down into the water, and when he was out of the boat, he had taken his eyes off of Yahushua, and he was looking at the storm and the wind. And then he started sinking. But you keep your eyes on him, and you're fine. Don't think you can do it. You have to trust in his power.
It's really about love, isn't it? The test is teaching us how to love. If you bring this into your home and start practicing this with your wife or with your husband, then you're training yourself to love, and it's like establishing your behavior. Yeah, you know. And
watch out for Gnosticism, because knowledge is not the goal.
Yeah, so that's wonderful.
It breeds arrogance, and you don't want that.
It's wonderful, brother.
It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful study, and it all comes from Yahushua. You know, I mean, you and I didn't do this. It comes from his power. You know, and we do it out of love. Well,
amazing, mate.
Yes, it is. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Lift up Yahushua.
Fantastic. What do you got? What do you got in mind for next month?
Well, I've been taking notes. It hasn't formulated yet what it's going to be, but if you have any ideas, it might. I've been working mostly. I'll tell you what. And this, I don't know if you want to let this out or not, but I'm refining the NATSARIM version called the Besorah of Yahushua, and I'm putting my personal time into it as many hours a day as I can to get this thing perfected and clear and simplified without all these diacritical marks and, you know, apostrophes and, you know, all this stuff that people see when they read Scripture. If you're reading the Scriptures and you see all these words that have all these funny little symbols on them, you're going, what? You know, it distracts you. So I'm simplifying it. If a lot of these names have 3 letters in it, I mean, what happened to the... They're stretched out into all these little diacritical marks, and there's all these vowels that are thrown in. I'm simplifying everything. And editing, you know, and working on the Besorah of Yahushua. And I think people, if Yahuwah wills, I'll finish this work and it'll be out there available to people, and they'll see the big difference. And the words will be popping out at him more clearly because his name is in there, the paleo version of his name, and you know. So we'll see how that does. So pray for that effort. And I don't know how we're ever going to get it printed, but you know, because they don't come free. You can't walk up to a printer and go, "You've got to print this for free." You know, they don't do it that way.
Yeah.
Well, that's another bridge, but you know, Yahuwah will provide. But as far as the next subject, I'm taking notes, and it hasn't really distilled it into a clear name yet, you know?
It's all right. Yeah, keep us surprised.
Yeah, well, he surprises me. He wakes me up in the middle of the night, and then bam. Yeah. I only got about 2 hours sleep last night, so. Do I look really tired?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit zoned. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, might be my advanced age, but yeah.
Mm.
In His power, though.
Yeah.
It's through His power. So get together.
Yeah, next month. Since Amy and I started practicing the test, you start seeing a lot about each other. We do really well for a few days, and she'll be letting me have everything and not saying anything, and I'll be doing it to her, and then something will happen after a few days, and one of us or both of us will just hit the roof. And all these complaints will come out, and you're doing this, and you're doing that, and you're doing this, and you're doing that, and I have to suffer it, and let you have it, and it's so hard letting you have all this stuff, and you realise that because most of us think, well, what is it? What is all this stuff you're suffering? What? Am I that hard to live with? And the answer is yeah. Most of us are. We're all hideous people, and so it's just a miracle we actually got somebody that wants to, and. So you realise that we're all hideous creatures, and you're learning how to stop and change our behaviour. Change. That's what it's all about. Change. So, and the Hebrews 12, the flogging and everything, that's enough deterrent in itself. You just get so sick of the pain.
Yeah, Hebrews 12 and Romans 12. You know, they're kind of like mirrors, reflecting one another.
Yeah. So all husbands and wives should start, if they're not, practicing the test. And you don't go telling each other that you're doing the test to them. You just start doing it. Start practicing it. And you'll establish a behaviour of love. And the other person will start walking over you and treating you like crap and, trying to take advantage of your newfound kindness because they want to test it. And if you break and you're angry, they'll go, oh, yeah. Yeah,
oh, don't worry. I failed many times. I've fallen down. But it's getting back up in His strength and saying, oh, you just think other people are so stupid. And why would they choose to do something like they do? Why do they go down these paths? And it can be little things. It can be major things. But, you have to look to Him. Keep your eyes on Him. And He'll lead you through this, Oh, yeah, it is wonderful. And it's going to be showing us more new things. But marriages, that's where the real thing is. You realize that the adversary never bothered Adam before Eve came along, or they call her Eve. Her name is really Kuah, the mother of the living. It wasn't until she comes along that the adversary comes into the picture, because it's marriage that he absolutely disdains, that relationship, So when he can come in as a wedge between husbands and wives, or even worse, one preacher that I was listening to not long ago was saying that these things that they call marriage are really not marriages, they're synthetic marriages, like Adam and Steve. It wasn't Adam and Kuah, it was Adam and Steve. No, it wasn't. That's not real. See, but all these things are coming against marriage, from the government, and saying, if you criticize anything, you're going to get put in jail. Okay. Yeah. But truth is truth, Yeah. But I like that term, synthetic marriage. It is.
They can have it.
Well, yeah, but the thing of it is, what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah?
Yeah.
Isn't that one of the things that we're supposed to look back at? Yeah, it really happened, Yahusha even mentioned it, So, yeah. Anyway, the whole thing that I see is marriage is a threat to the adversary, because it raises up righteous children. And that's the objective of any marriage. It's not about the man and the woman. When birds make a nest, it isn't about them. What do you think it's about? It's about those eggs and those little fellows that are little baby birds. It's about the baby birds. Even in the normal everyday environment, we can see you know, the reflection of the importance of cooperating together, males and females, to make offspring that will propagate their species, you know.
Mm. Well, I missed you, mate. It's been lovely chatting with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's lovely, and we want to thank Chris a lot for what he's given us and this through Yahusha in him.
Mm. Yeah, it's been amazing. It's
yeah, and it's going to continue to be. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all about behavior.
It is. It is. Well, everybody, keep your behavior tied to the 10 Commandments. You know, and read Hebrews 12.
Mm. Well, catch up with you in a few weeks, brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll be in touch with you by email. Love you.
Love you too, mate.
Okay. Bye-bye now.
Rise up, NATSARIM around the world. Take arms, make the choice to love each other. Stand strong in armor to extinguish arrows. Rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. You need more of Torah's light inside you. But are you willing to be filled? Darkness always there to make excuses. First fruits are getting trained to love. Rise up, NATSARIM around the world. Take arms, make the choice to love each other. Stand strong in armor to extinguish arrows. Rise up, rise up, oh, rise up. Take arms, stand strong. Rise up, rise up, rise up. The NATSARIM around the world. Take arms, make the choice to love each other. Stand strong in armor to extinguish arrows. Rise up, rise up, rise up today.